All right, so it's 5 in the morning. I'm working on the documentary. I put a longer cut up on the $20 tier on Patreon. If you're not in the $20 tier and you're on Patreon, I'm putting a couple more cuts up there, and then I'm going to put an hour-long cut on the $100 tier. But really happy with the responses that it's gotten. Everybody seems to really like it, and I'm excited to release it into the world. Let's get on to the story. I'm leaving Victorville right now, Victimville. Really one of the worst places that I've ever been to. You know, one of the worst places on earth. It literally feels like it is hell. I mean, from the radical weather there, I mean, it's just extreme. You know, it's extremely hot or it's extremely cold, to it just being this desert scape. When you look out into the distance when you're on the yard, it looks like a desert wasteland, you know, and it's just, the energy there is palpable. You know, it's evil. You can feel it. It's, I don't know, it's just a very gloomy place. And I didn't have a good experience there. Now, you know, I've read comments, and of course people are going to be like, you know, I fucked up, I owed money, or, you know, whatever people are going to say about it. Truth of the matter is that I didn't do anything wrong in that situation except for doing drugs in the first place. And I can definitely admit that that's a mistake, especially considering that I just had a baby. But, you know, I ran up debts because I'm a dope fiend, but it's not like I checked out on the bills, you know. I went to the hole and I was able to get a high juice, you know, high ranking person that had juice with the cops to let me go back to the yard to go clear my name, because I didn't want to leave the feds on bad terms like that. And then they beat me up. I don't know. It just seems like, you know, and that's one of the scary things about prison, is that you're around a lot of pretty ignorant people. You're also around a lot of very smart people. But the smart people in prison stick to themselves. You know, they don't do stupid shit like I do. I wouldn't consider myself one of the smart people. But you're around, there are definitely people that were, you know, just ignorant, completely irrational, and the kind of people that just have the propensity towards violence. And it's a bad environment. You know, I catch myself saying stuff all the time that I wouldn't normally say if I hadn't been in such a toxic environment, you know. But when you're in a toxic environment for that many years, a lot of that stuff sticks with you, you know. Like, for instance, in prison, everybody calls their girl their bitch. And, man, I'm fucking with this badass bitch right now. Yeah, she's bad, bro. Yeah. I mean, she's about to get surgery, you know, for health reasons, but she's bad, dog. Hey, this fucking hind's so bad, fool. You should see her ass, dog. It's the size of a fucking... You hear me mess up? It's the size of a fucking lawnmower, dog. For real, dog. Serio. This bitch's ass is bad. So, you know, I get out, and I'll just be I'll be like, how long you been with your bitch? I'll say that to, like, some stockbroker. He's like, excuse me? I'm like, how long have you been dating your bitch? And you really, like, forget that that's an uncouth thing. Like, you don't say, who talks like that? You know? And I'll catch myself slipping once in a while and like, saying that about Karina. Yeah, just me and my bitch, my kid are going to go to the street, or going to go to the beach. And people are like, your bitch? What do you mean? You know, they think that it's like Jamie Lake or something, wearing, like, a bondage outfit on a leash. Jamie Lake was such a piece of shit. And then I was like, God, am I Jamie Lake now? And even though I didn't do anything wrong, but, you know, I mean, there's people that would tell you their prison experiences and they're going to fake the funk, you know? Oh, yeah, fool. I was slitting dudes' throats in there, just to be completely real with you. Yeah. Yeah. I was raping fools. You're like, what? Oh, yeah. I had to do what I had to do. Weren't you doing like 4 months for 2 DUIs? Well, yeah, bro, but you got to survive in there, dog. You always hear people say stupid stuff like that. Or like, they'll be like, dude, that guy is the most solid guy in the world. He's the solidest, bro. It's always shit like that. You're like, man, it's very reminiscent of like elementary school, you know, recess, but you go to the yard, you know. Even like the girlfriends that you have, like people have like these pen pal girlfriends that they meet. You know, a lot of times they're dudes. You hear about that all the time. You know, they're writing some girl and they get catfished. You see some like whatever girl, you know, it's like these pictures and yeah, this is my hind the dog. She's holding it down. I met her on the pen pal website. And then they get out and, you know, it's like some really creepy guy in like, you know, mime makeup. He's like, what's up? It's Ashley, bro. Held you down the whole time, dog. Let's go home and fuck. And, you know, there's a lot of convicts that were like, I'll do it if you buy me a carton of cigarettes, man. All right. It's cold. You wanna wear my jacket? And the convict's like, okay. Puts the jacket on and he goes home and fucks Ashley, the used car salesman from Reno. You know, and there's weird stuff like that that does happen. But Victorville is just a nightmare. You know, I mean, the whole thing from the second I got there, tripping on my charge. It's a wobbler, which like, I don't even know what that means. They're like, well, you know, like it could be smashable, but theoretically, if it's not smashable on this avenue, but it might be smashable on this road, it kind of merges together in a conjunction on a sidewalk where everybody's smashing people with scooters. You're like, what the fuck did you just say? People say some really weird stuff like that in prison. I mean, not like that. That was just, I mean, obviously that was an attempt at humor. I'm trying to think of like a more realistic example, you know? I mean, they'll say stuff like, well, yeah, I mean, it's pimping and pandering. If it's pimping and pandering on a minor, it's a sex crime. But if it's pimping and pandering on an adult, but you used to be on this yard and you put work in and you made some sacrifices for it, then we're just going to let you walk. You're like, so basically, if I hadn't been here before and beat people up, then I'd be getting beat up for this charge that I wouldn't be getting beat for if I did that. That's right. That's right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really tired. And I just, you know, it's like the sun's about to come up and, well, the sun is coming up now. I don't know. I just feel like I should be putting up a video at least every day on Patreon. So I'm going to try to do this story, but you can probably tell I'm really tired. And it's just because I'm a good guy, you know? I'm just not going to leave you guys hanging like that. So, you know, obviously I had a bad experience there. Bad call. Got beat up. Got beat up again in the hole. 3 broken ribs at Santa Barbara County. Stitches at Victorville. And a hairline fracture at San Bernardino County. So I wasn't like off to an exceptionally good term. I mean, I've had better. Let's put it that way. You know, I mean, before I just narrowly escaped all the time, I was like the Indiana Jones at Dope Fiends. You know, I was just kind of like juggling debts, robbing Peter to pay Paul, that kind of thing. The lies would mount up, you know, and yeah, in retrospect, hell yeah, that's piece of shit behavior. You don't want to go to prison and act like that. But the thing is the only reason I was in prison in the first place was because I was such a bad dope fiend. And it's not like those things go away when you get to prison. So, I mean, it depends on, there's people that I truly believe aren't drug addicts, but they claim that they're drug addicts, you know? They go through maybe like a phase with it, and then they go to county jail for like 9 days, and they're just like, that experience was super heavy, man. I'm sober now. and they like never use drugs again. They like go on to write books about their recovery and shit. They make like a couple recovery books and then some cookbook that's like rehab oriented, and then like shows them on the cover with an apron on and like a chef hat. Those kind of people aren't real drug addicts. And like I'd run into that a lot at AA meetings. You know, there's nothing that, and this is probably a testament to me being a selfish piece of shit, but there's nothing that bothers me more than when someone gets up on the podium and says that, you know, they were in misery for a couple years drinking, went to one AA meeting, and it just snapped. Because that hasn't been my experience, you know. If I was like a spiritually developed person, I'd be happy for somebody that gets sober, because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really matter how you get there. It's the point is getting there and just getting sober, or whatever your version of that is. And for me, that means manageability. If I can manage my life, I consider myself sober. Also, not sticking needles in myself. I mean, if it wasn't for Nico, I'd probably still be sticking needles in myself. I think there's a lot of people that aren't legitimately drug addicts. They don't really have like the illness of it. There's a certain compulsion aspect to it. And you don't have to have gone to prison to be a real addict or alcoholic. But it's that thing where you don't really have a pain threshold. Consequences can keep mounting and keep mounting, and someone can tell you, if you get high again, you're going to prison for 5 years. And like the person with the illness of it can't really register those consequences, and they just keep pushing it further and further and further until they do go to prison. And some people get lucky and somehow, you know, they get diverted when they're on some like really, really awful trajectory like that. But for me, I'm a real drug addict, and I really have the illness of it, you know, that compulsion. So when I go to prison, that doesn't go away. It's not just like, oh man, I'm locked up. You know what? I was doing some dumb shit on the street. Not here, man. I'm going to be positive now. It's just not how it works. You know, not for me at least. In fact, all the ingredients that make you a drug addict or alcoholic, the shame, guilt, resentment, Hep C. I'm just kidding. That you can be a drug addict and not have Hep C, but you cannot be an IV drug user and not have Hep C. I don't give a fuck who you are. You know, well, I just never. You know what? I never shared needles. How could you not share needles if you're addicted to IV drug use? There's going to come a point where it's either you share a needle or you go sick. And I don't know, every legit heroin addict I know would rather be dead than dope sick. And when you'd rather be dead than dope sick, all of those consequences go out the window, and you wind up in prison. So I did all this to myself, you know, and I can own up to that. You know, I mean, I pushed my drug addiction much further than I should have. I was given a million opportunities from my parents, you know, the mud bath rehabs where they come and they like, you know, give you acupuncture and all these advanced therapy strategies. And still, I just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And that's why I've been to prison 3 times. So they take me out of Victorville, and the guys that picked me up were 2 narcotics detectives. One of them was the arresting officer. The other one wasn't. The main guy, the undercover cop, with the same name as me, Ryan, he wasn't there. But it was one of his partners that was there. Remember I said I knocked on the door and there was like 6 sheriffs with guns pointed at my face? I guess one of these guys was one of them. I didn't remember him, but that's what he told me. And they were super unfriendly in the beginning. You know, they cranked up the radio and they didn't try to start conversation with me. And I was shackled and handcuffed. I was super uncomfortable. And I remember I was just looking out the window, and, you know, anytime you have been locked up or you've been confined indoors, it's always a treat to be transported somewhere. You know, I hear some people say that it bums them out to see the free world. Not me. You know, for me, it's always been a treat. And there was like, I remember there was this hole like in the bottom of the car. It was like some old cop Buick from like the 80s. You know, it was like some shit you'd see on like Miami Vice. It was some old school ass cop car. And it had this big hole like in the floorboard. And I remember just watching like the road scroll by, and I was like thinking like, man, this is super unsafe. What if I just fall? It was like big enough where I could probably get like sucked into it. And I'm just wearing shackles. Could you imagine how shitty that would be? You're like cuffed and shackled and you just start bouncing down the street. That's something that would happen to me. I was having that kind of luck on this particular term. Finally, you know, about 2 hours go by, and, you know, I'd been looking out and like looking at all the road, you know, all the billboards and everything. I was surprised how much marijuana stuff I was seeing. I mean, it had become legal recreationally about a year before that, but now they were actually allowing people to open commercial dispensaries, and, you know, moratoriums were getting lifted. And I saw billboards for cannabis everywhere. I just remember that. I remember that from this particular drive. So finally, they lower the radio and they start talking amongst themselves. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking at them and I'm listening to them. They're talking about cop stuff, you know? They're like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of shitty that there's so many white people in Santa Barbara. I don't know. Just doesn't feel right setting up white guys with drugs like that. I'm like, hey, you know, I was like thinking about it. I was like, man, I should probably take the opportunity to ask these guys questions that I'd always want to know about narcotics detectives. You know, I mean, as a member of the drug world for as long as I can, I mean, how many opportunities do I have to just sit down next to narcs and actually ask them questions about things that I want to know about? So I just started talking to them. I was like, hey, man, how you doing? It was like they couldn't believe that I was making sounds. You know, it was as if I was like some prehistoric animal that they were transporting. Like I made a noise and they were just like startled by it. I was like, oh, these guys are straight pussies, man. I was like, hey, can I ask you guys a question? They're all like stiffening up. They're like, yeah, go ahead. I was like, hey, man, what's the percentage of people that cooperate? They're like, you mean snitch? They're trying to be like cool, like, you mean snitch champ? I was like, yeah, snitching. And they said 95%. I was like, 95%? He's like, yeah, it's like 1 in 1,000 that won't snitch. Now, I believe that, you know. The drug world's cutthroat, man. And Santa Barbara is like a pretty soft spot. You know, not a lot of bad stuff happens there. You know, I was just reading an article in The Independent, the local paper there. And they were talking about how they're like asking for all this money from the federal government to try to stop the gang problem there. There's really not a gang problem in Santa Barbara. There's one gang. You know, like once every 10 years, there's like a fatal stabbing. Yeah, a stabbing. And I live in LA now. There's like, you hear gunshots all the time. It's cracking in LA. But in Santa Barbara, about the worst that happens is somebody gets stabbed and killed, which is still horrible. Not saying it isn't. But for them to ask for federal funding to stop the gang problem seems a little criminal to me on their end. You know, it's like they're essentially asking for money for problems that don't exist. And that's exactly what I was in prison for to begin with. I had talked to, you know, attorneys. Remember when I was talking to the high-end attorneys, and what they did was classic entrapment. They manufactured a prospective crime, meaning the heroin dealer, Charlie Becchio is his name. It's not really his name. That's really his name. But he had gotten busted, obviously, for some drug stuff because he had been selling drugs for a while. And clearly he had gotten busted for it. Even my attorney said that that's who it was. And then there was paperwork. But I knew even before I saw the paperwork. I just, you know, I mean, it was obvious what happened, but I actually saw it on paper. But he had gotten busted, and then they asked him to set up other people, and I fell into that trap. But this is the thing. I never said hey, I have a prostitute that's looking for Johns. He asked me if I knew any prostitutes, and I said yes. And he started like constructing the entire thing. Now, what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have been involved with prostitution in the first place, even if my motive for doing it was to protect her, because she had told me she'd been beaten, she'd been raped, and I don't know. I mean, she was like we were friends at the time. We were going to AA together. So it was a relationship based off of sobriety. Relationships like that, if you're a former drug addict, are always the most genuine. So we had like a genuine friendship, and I cared about her, and I didn't want her to be put in harm's way like that. But that crime was manufactured, like I said, and that's what Santa Barbara does. And when I read that article, it reminded me of that. And then I started asking the detective how what they did to me was legal. Now, at this point, the conversation gets a little combative, because he's trying to argue that I'm a piece of shit. How does he say this? He goes, man, you're a piece of shit. And I was like, why am I a piece? He's like, because you're pimping out girls in Santa Barbara. I said, man, I didn't make any money off that. I wasn't making money off that. That was for her. She just told me what to say to you, because she thought that because I was a guy, just my presence over the phone, I think all along she wanted me to, to go with her. But that's not how she presented it to me. Basically like, hey, jump on the phone with guy, make sure that he's not a weirdo, make sure that he knows that you're not going to tolerate him being a weirdo. And that's that. And just, set up a time and place and tell him what the price is. $400 for an hour. And she said that she'd do, whatever beyond that. Yeah, if he wants to do anal, I usually charge $45, but it's on the cuff. It's included with the 4 bills. Tell him, I also toss salads. I was like, all right, I was like, put the phone down. I was like, hey, she wants you to know that she also tosses salads. I don't know if you're in a spendy mood. How much? $7 extra. No, $7. Oh. Yeah, he said, yeah. Okay, cool. So I guess Friday at noon it is then. Of course I was joking with that, but it was a conversational, casual thing. And to be completely honest, at the time, I really didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I think a lot of that may have to do with the fact that my moral compass is skewed. I'm just like, oh, that's normal. She's going to fuck an old dude for money, which is normal. If you really think about it, that's happening all the time for free. Well, I guess not for free, but not in the direct, overt, like, hey, this money I'm giving you equals sex. But there's a lot of inadvertent prostitution going on. And then for anyone that's like, well, what I did is I'm a piece of shit for that. It's like, okay, for those of you saying that, no more Pornhub for you. No more porn, because it's the same thing. There's guys profiteering. And I wasn't even making fucking money. That's the crazy thing about it. I can own up to the fact that I made a mistake, but I don't think I deserved all the shit that I went through. And this is the kind of thing that I'm telling the detectives. I'm like, how can you sleep at night knowing that you essentially made this crime up? I missed the birth of my kid over this. Like, can't you guys go solve fucking real crimes? There's child molesters in our town. I go on the sex offender registry sometimes. I just type like my zip code to see how many chomos there are. It's like measles popping up. It's so fucking crazy. It's red everywhere. And I'm sure that if you go to Megan's Law and you look up your zip code, you'd be surprised at how many sex offenders there are. You'd be surprised how many people that are sex offenders, like on your block. Like, whoa, I play basketball with that guy. And they don't even look like sex offenders. That's what's crazy, and it's prevalent. But it's like, that's what they should be going after, That's like real crimes. Like, why can't they have task force to go after that? Because they're the weirdos too. It's so hypocritical. And they're like arguing with me. They're like justifying it, telling me that I'm a piece of shit for doing that. You exploited that young girl. She's 28 years old. She'd been arrested for prostitution 3 times, and my role in it was to protect her, which is a crime in itself, but that's called protecting a prostitute. And that's usually punishable by probation or something very minimal like that. So I feel like I got the short end of the stick. Maybe not, you know? I mean, I've been to prison 3 times. I'm probably not right about a lot of stuff. I'm just saying that's the way I feel about it. So 95% of people that they arrest snitch, which, like I said, I didn't find that surprising, but at the same time, it's kind of unsettling. Think about 95%. So like, you know, it's pretty much everybody you know is a snitch is what they're telling me. And I believe that. There's a weird thing, like all the guys that I grew up in Santa Barbara, I wasn't the only one running around doing criminal shit, but I'll tell you what, I am one of a very, very small handful of people that I know that have caught significant cases and gone to prison. You see a lot of people I grew up with, a lot of people in Santa Barbara, I know a guy that has 7 felonies and he's never been to prison. There's no way that guy's not an informant, you know? I've been speculating that for years, and a lot of other people have too. A lot of people where I live get caught selling drugs. They get caught, you know, I know people that have been caught with guns that didn't go to prison, and they already had a felony for something else. You know, there's a lot of stuff like that going on. So what they're telling me, you know, had validity. I just knew that it did. I also asked him what was more popular now in Santa Barbara. Like, what are people doing? Is it heroin or is it meth? Because it would go through, when I was growing up, it went in cycles, you know. Heroin was popular right as I was getting out of high school. It seemed to have like a little like surge in popularity. And then crystal meth took over for a few years, and people in Santa Barbara were mixing cocaine with heroin. You know, it's high class, spoiled brat shit. Oh, let me get that cocaine with my Grey Poupon. You know, it's like stuff like that. It's not like the grimy, like, hey, let's shoot goofballs in Bakersfield, you know, on goofballs, meth, and heroin. But they were telling me that now it was synonymous. Anywhere there was heroin, there was crystal meth, and vice versa. And he said that when they would bust heroin dealers now, they'd also find them with a bunch of meth. And that it was like pretty much every time they busted someone at that period, this is in 2018 now, you know, they would, or was it 2018? Yeah, 2018. You know, they'd find meth and heroin together. So they're kind of arguing. I'm arguing with them. I tell them about my documentary. I'm like, there's a good chance that before this car ride's over, I will have gone viral. They just kind of like looked at me, you know, the guys, you know, to be fair to those guys, by the end of that car ride, they were at least being nice to me. That didn't negate the fact that I basically got set up for a crime that I am not a pimp. I've never done that before. And that particular occasion, like I said, they set me up. So eventually they bring me to Santa Barbara County Jail. And the whole intake process there is long, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours sometimes. I mean, it's not as bad as like LA County Jail where it can take 3 days, but you know, it can still be, it still seems like it takes forever. And I got in the drunk tank. There's always a bunch of little kids. I'm like, hey, what'd you get busted for? Hey, dog, I got busted for tagging, fool. Tagging? Like, oh, you spray paint? You spray painted like a building? Nah, dog, I just put my little tag handle on my name is sticker, and then I just slapped it on mailboxes, dog. And I got busted for that. They're giving me a fucking $700 fine, too. My life's fucking over, dog. My hyna's gonna leave me and everything. I'm like, yeah, you gotta go do time? He's like, nah, because we gotta pay $700. I don't have that shit, fool. You don't make money tagging. It's like, damn. And then, you know, you're always with people in the drunk tank that are asking you how much time they're going to get. Like, hey, brother, word around the drunk tank is that you've done some time and that you have some experience with law. Like, yeah, I've done time, but I mean, I don't know. What'd you get busted for? Oh, I don't really want to say, man. I just got arrested today. I've never been in trouble. How much time do you think I'm going to get? You don't want to say. And then you never know if you're with some weirdo or not, right? And then everyone's asking you, I got caught with, you know, a teen or a meth. What do you think's going to happen to me? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think they're sending you to prison for that anymore. Oh, dude, thank you so much, bro. To come here, hug me. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that in jail. You don't hug, right? And then eventually I just took a toilet paper roll and I passed out on it. I wake up maybe like 3 or 4 hours later. That's how exhausted I am. As we've talked about many times, it's very, very, very tiring to do any sort of transportation when you're in jail or prison, you know? Just, I don't know. You have to get up early. You're shackled, handcuffed, uncomfortable for most of the day. And so anyway, so I pass out. I wake up. And I can't believe what I fucking see. One of the guys that jumped me when I was at Santa Barbara County Jail before this. So that you guys don't get confused, I started at Santa Barbara County Jail. That's where I got arrested. That's where I got the broken ribs. I went to like Front Central, basically in isolation, because I went PC up. And then I got transferred down to San Bernardino County Jail for my federal stuff. When I was in San Bernardino County Jail, that's when I was the REPA. That's when we got in the riot. That's when I was with New York. Hey, yo, dude. Hey, bro. Come on, bro. That guy. Then I went to Victorville. I got beat up there. And now I'm back at Santa Barbara County Jail, waiting to go to state prison. And just because I had signed my plea agreement. So, again, let me reiterate some of this stuff. And I know, you know, this episode is pretty uneventful. I understand that, but it's necessary bridge to the next part of this. So, just to reiterate, I had signed a plea agreement in the state for 3 with half. So, you know, it's basically signing 18 months of state prison time. And on that deal, it said that it would run concurrent to any federal sentence I got, because we were anticipating I was going to get my federal probation violation. Then I went down there and I got sentenced to 8 months. So I did 8 months in, in county jail. Or I did 8 months in what they considered federal custody. So Santa Barbara County Jail, San Bernardino County Jail, Victorville, that all counted towards my federal sentence. That was 8 months, finished my Fed number, and that 8 months was going to be applied to my 3 with half, meaning I'd have about 10 more months left to do. But I'd only signed the plea agreement. I hadn't been sentenced. So just because I signed the plea agreement, the judge can always deviate from that. So there's still some of that anxiety about the uncertainty of your future. But if you have a signed deal, they generally stick to it. And so now I'm back at Santa Barbara County Jail. I go to sleep on the toilet paper roll. I wake up and I see one of the guys that jumped me. He's sleeping. He looks like he's drunk and passed out. He has meth sores all over his face. There's like a bush branch sticking out of his asshole, just kind of jutting out. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, after all I've been through, there's no way I'm not going to get this dude. There's no way I'm not going to get this guy. And we'll get into that in the next episode. I'm in the drunk tank with this guy, and he's one of the people that had jumped me before I left. And I'm sorry that this episode's getting cut so short, but you can probably tell I'm exhausted. I got to get sleep, but I wanted to at least get something up for you guys. I do appreciate you, and we'll do something tomorrow for sure. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out patreon.com/Ryan Leone. Check out the paulnarcanproject.com. It's paulnarcanproject.com. All the links for the stuff's in the pinned comments. And we'll see you next time. Palabra.